And I get a call, and I wake up, and I go, "Who is this?" And he said, "It's me." I said, "Oh, Elvis, where are you?" I think he was in Dallas, changing planes. And I said, "Who's with you?" And he said, "Nobody." And he said, "I don't want anybody to know where I am. Would you pick me up at the airport in L.A.?" We were at LAX. We drove up to his plane. Elvis was the last person off. And he's walking down these steps. But that's when he proceeded to tell me that we had to take all the stewardesses home. So we took 4 stewardesses to their individual places. And we get to the Hillcrest house. And Elvis is pretty tired. So he went to sleep. Here I am sitting, basically the only person in the world knowing where Elvis Presley is. Elvis gets up Sunday afternoon. We have coffee. It was really quite nice. There was nobody in the world but me and Elvis. Just kind of catching up. He was in a great mood. He started telling me, I left Memphis, you know. Everybody's worried about me spending too much money, and he said, so I just cut out. I think he took the first plane that left Memphis, and I think it wound up in Washington, D.C. He checked into a hotel and didn't know what to do. Went back to the airport, took a flight to Dallas, and then called me. So I'm hearing all these stories, and then he says, as it starts getting about sunset, "Jerry, I need you to go to Washington with me. If I go with you, I gotta ask you, people probably think you're kidnapped. Priscilla, Vernon," he said, "you can call Graceland, tell him I'm okay, and get Sonny to meet us up there." I didn't know it was going to be a historic meeting. I didn't even know what we were going to do in Washington. I'm not sure if he did. We had no money. I just didn't have any money. Elvis didn't have any on him. He had a credit card. It was Sunday night, and he had a checkbook at the house. So the limousine driver knew somebody that might cash a check. So we drive on the way to the airport. I get the check cashed, $500. We get to the airport, and they board Elvis and I first. We took an all-night flight on American Airlines, and we're sitting up in first class, and it was around Christmas time, and it was Vietnam time. All these soldiers were coming on, and Elvis was saying hello, and he got into a real heavy conversation with one of them, and he kind of elbows me, and he goes, "Where's that money?" And I said, "What money?" He said, "The $500. I said, "Elvis, we're going to Washington. That's all we have." He goes, "You don't understand. This guy's going home from Vietnam to see his family." Gave him the whole $500. So we were penniless again. I'm traveling with Elvis Presley, going to Washington, D.C., and, okay, fine, you know, you kind of, you know, get used to that with Elvis. En route, Elvis asked me if I thought that there might be some stationery on the plane. And I said, well, I'll ask one of the stewardesses. And she came back with American Airlines stationery. I'd never seen Elvis write a letter in my life. And I think he only wrote 4 or 5 in his whole life. He's sitting there writing away. I'm thinking, this is pretty weird. So he said, "I'm writing this letter to the president. Would you proofread it for me?" I read the letter, you know, and it was real sincere from Elvis as a American citizen to his president. It was very respectful. It's not a bad written letter, actually. A lot of grammar stuff. His penmanship looked like a doctor's writing. But I said, "You know what, Elvis, is perfect, just like it is." So he said, "Okay, good." And he seals it up. We get to Washington about daybreak. Elvis said, "I want to drop the letter by the White House." Well, you got to picture this. Not quite daylight. Elvis has a cane. He has this cape with a high collar. His hair's very long at this point for Elvis. And he jumps out of the back of the limousine White House security, I mean, they think there's a terrorist or something. I don't know what they thought back then, but I see it. This is not good. And so I jump out, and I said, excuse me, but this is Mr. Elvis Presley. He wrote a letter to the president. He just wanted to drop it off, and they were wonderful. We'll make sure that Mr. Presley's letter gets taken to the president. So we go now to the Washington Hotel, the hotel where Elvis had stopped in before he came and got me. And he said, Jerry, you stay here. I'm going to John Findlater's office. Here's my number, but you stay here for the president's call. I go, yeah, sure. I read all these Howard Hughes books, and I'm thinking, he'd leave people in a hotel for a year. So I'm checking out the menu. I could be here a long time. What Elvis's mission was to go to the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Through rock and roll, he felt it was kind of promoting a drug culture, and he felt with his influence behind the scenes, he could make things a little better, and that's why he wanted this badge. Elvis is gone about 40 minutes. I get a call from the White House. It's Bud Eagle Crow on the White House staff. The president has read Mr. Presley's letter and would like to see him in 30 minutes. So I called this number Elvis left me, and the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs answers the phone. He goes, yeah. And I said, excuse me, this is Mr. Shilling. Is Elvis Presley there? And he said, who is this? And I told him, and he said, okay. And Elvis gets on the phone, and he's really down. He goes, I'm not doing any good here, because Findlater would not give him the badge. And I said, well, Elvis, you just got a call. The president wants to see you at the White House in 30 minutes. So I'm out in front of the hotel. About this point, Sonny arrives from Memphis. I say, Sonny, throw your luggage there with the bellman. We're on the way to the White House. Elvis pulls up, and we go to the White House. So they proceed to take Elvis to the Oval Room, and they tell Sonny and I that, it's too bad, but we can't, nobody can go but Elvis. It's a security thing. And we go, Elvis is pretty hard to say no to. He said, it's out of the president's. It's a Secret Service decision. It's out of the president's hands. Elvis is such a charmer. He knows right what to say to the right people, and the phone rings. The president wants to meet Mr. Presley's friends. So they take us down to the Oval Room. I never will forget this scene. The president didn't come to the door. Elvis came to the door. You would have thought it was Graceland, I swear. And he's in a great mood, and he opens the door, and the Oval Room goes way out, and it comes down, and I see at the end President Nixon signing something, and I froze. And Elvis thought I was scared. So he kind of pushes me and started laughing. He said, oh, it's okay. Don't be afraid. And Elvis introduces us to Nixon, and we're in the Oval Room of the White House. I really kind of flashed back on a couple of poor kids in North Memphis had come a long way. We were here with the President of the United States in the Oval Room of the White House. Elvis had really taken me a long way from where I grew up and came from, and he had come a long way himself. I realize Elvis has gotten President Nixon to override the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs to get Elvis a narcotics badge. The badge comes over. I mean, Elvis was beaming. He had been on a quest for a year to get this badge.
I didn't know that much about him except what I had read. But as I talked to him, I sensed, too, that basically he's a very shy man. The flamboyance was covering up the shyness.
Here's one of the most conservative presidents. And don't forget, just a few years before, this was the guy that was a threat to the world, Elvis Presley. The establishment certainly was afraid of what he was promoting.
people say that because later on it was found that he had used drugs, that therefore he could not be a good example. They overlooked the fact that he never used illegal drugs. It was always drugs prescribed by his physician. But I think that he was a very sincere and decent man.
They became friends. I mean, this tells you the charm of Elvis Presley. He was so happy. He was proud that the president received him. He shared pictures of Priscilla and Lisa with the president. It was an interesting thing because I saw two greats at the top, but not at the top of their game at the top. And I think they both recognized that in each other. And I think there was some kind of mutual understanding. And, you know, they kept in contact. Well, you know, he spent the next weeks showing the badge to everybody. He had everybody come to Graceland. He actually, I didn't make that trip because it was before I went back to work for him. He went back to Washington. He was going to see Hoover. Hoover wouldn't see him.